Hello, everyone. My name's Hank Settler,
And I'm Casey McBride.
and we are here with another episode of Stir Crazy Shamans. As soon as I find my little video, here we go.
I have a friend with me here today. She said that she wasn't going to be quiet or content unless she just was a part of at least the beginning of the show.
Absolutely. Oh, she definitely has a mind of her own, and she loves being part of the action, or not. That's which is why she can't make up her mind and goes in and out.
Oh, yeah. She keeps it entertaining.
Absolutely. And welcome, everyone. And if you are wondering, yes, this is the same co-host. That's Casey. He liked how I looked so much that he decided that I got to get in on that action. And
I did. Not this part, though, just on top.
right.
I'll keep the beard. The beard likes me. It seems to like me, so I'll keep it around. But yeah, no, it was funny because I think I was kind of like on the verge of, if I remember correctly, I kind of needed a haircut before the COVID-19 thing hit, and then it just, obviously no one was getting any haircuts then, so I was starting to look a little ridiculous. In the mornings when I would do the show, it wouldn't be so bad because it was like right after I got out of the shower. But like at the end of the day, my hair was going in all different directions, and it was not a good look for going to see clients since I started up doing massage therapy again. So I told them, take it all off.
And for those of you that have been watching the show for some time and have known that or have asked about are you able to get MP3s of it and listen to it? All that is now possible. We're still uploading all the archives, but if you go to the YouTube channel now, in the header, there is a link to one of these streaming services. And if you click that, you can download. We got the most recent episodes, and I have started to put in the very beginning episode. So like the very first show that we ever did, it's all available there. It will even work in Android Auto. So like if you're driving around, you could be like, hey, Android Auto, play Stir Crazy Shamans, and it's going to start playing our podcast. So that's all
That's
available.
cool.
It is also now on iTunes. I don't have the link for that one set up yet, but if you're an iTunes user, you can find it in the iTunes store. So a lot of great possibilities for you to take it with you wherever you want to go, and let us know what topics you want to hear about, because we can make some content around what you would like to know about. That's why we kind of changed our whole flow. If you notice, the title today is Intuitive Inspirations, because we never stay on topic anyhow. So now we're just going to talk and see what comes up and make up the title after the fact about what we actually talked about.
Mm-hmm. So I wanted to share a little story to start out with. I went to, this was going back based on something I was talking about before, but I decided I was going to make a spirit guide altar. I have like a little altar back there with just like some various tools and things, and like my little cauldron that I burn fires in and do fun stuff. But I wanted an altar specifically for my spirit guides, since I work with them so closely and intimately. And I went to the local shop, and I decided I was going to buy a crystal for each one of my angel guides. There's 4 that I work with really, really closely. And so I think 3 out of 4 of them before going either told me exactly what crystal they wanted or what kind of energy in a crystal that they wanted. So that was pretty easy. But then the one guide said, I'm going to tell you when we're at the store. I'll like point to it, and that's when you're going to get for me. So I was walking through, and there was this greenish kind of crystal with these little black swirls throughout it. And I didn't know, I've never seen that crystal before. Well, I probably have, but I was never aware of it. So the guy points and he's like, oh yeah, grab one of those. And I go, okay. And his energy is kind of this like green and like dark color as well, so it kind of like matched up with the way his energy looks to me. And then I went and didn't ask about any of the other crystals I bought really, but I went and I was like, hey, I have no idea anything about this little green crystal. I was asking the owner of the shop, can you tell me a little bit about that crystal? And she pulls out a book and is reading it, but the one thing she said is, she's like, it is a poisonous crystal. If you like were to actually, like, people want to cut it on their own and like make things out of it, she always tells them don't do that because you'll
Was this
like.
malachite by chance?
I think so.
Yeah. Okay.
So anyway, so they're really fascinating. So as soon as she said that, this like a light went off. I was like, oh my god, that's amazing. So this guide of mine, he before I really connected and remembered how we met each other, I always see him. He's got this knife that he kind of like plays with, and then it like splits off into all these different knives that he uses to like cut cords and things. And oh, where was I going with that? Oh, so anyway, so one day I was watching him do that, and I asked him, okay, well, how do we know each other? What's with the knife and all that? And how I met him is when I was, that's where I come from, is from like the alliance of what humans call angels. And we were in like battle together, and he had gotten stabbed by this poisonous knife, and I like saved his life. I pulled the knife out and did healing on him. And so ever since then, he kept the knife and he uses it to do healing work now. So the fact that he pointed to that crystal and it was like a poisonous and yet also healing crystal, I thought was just the most incredible little synchronicity for me. That was so cool.
Funny story, when Ryan Dean, who's one of the office partners at Holistic Health and Healing, he used to have a lapidary company, and he would buy like bulk stones and like cut them down, and he had a company called Mystic Stone and made this beautiful jewelry. And one of the things that you'll do is you have like special saws and things to cut things. And I don't think at the time when he was just getting into it, he knew all the ins and outs about crystals. And as he's cutting, I believe it was malachite, the mask that he had on, he just noticed like it felt wet and it was just covered in blood, and the dust from cutting it had gotten into his lungs and caused like this really bad breathing issue. And so he had like a crash course experience. And some crystals, like for some of those things, like you have to keep it wet, and there's like very specific ways you have to cut or polish the stones because of how toxic it can be. And that's even when you want to wash your hands after you touch it before you would like eat food and things like that. So then the question that leads me to tell people, if you have crystals like that, one of the wonderful ways you can use them is to make elixirs, right? So if you have like malachite and you wanted to put the energy into like a water tonic, instead of putting it directly in the water like you would with some other crystals, you get like a little cup. You put the crystals that you want to infuse into the water and let it float in the water. And energetically, it will still imbue the energetic qualities into the water without getting the chemical qualities. So a little crystal tip for you.
Wait, so you're telling people to put it in the water, but
let it float. So like if you have a cup of water and then you have like a little bowl, like a little offering bowl or something, you put that in the water. So the bowl is floating in the water, but the crystal itself isn't actually in physical contact with the water. Okay, and that's how you can, or the other way you could do it is if you had like a little plate that you were lifting your cup on. Check out my Marvin Martian cup, right? Have that up on top, and you can put the crystals underneath, or you can put symbols underneath the water to help infuse it. We would do that all the time with Reiki, like putting the Antakarana symbol under it, like the water that you're going to drink for the day, or different other things that would help energize and add different qualities to the water.
Mm. And speaking of infusing water, I did, I've done this a couple times where I've tried for like a week at a time or more, where every single glass of water that I drank, I did energy healing on, and I would like restructure energetically the water and infuse it with different intentions. And I remember one time doing that, the energy flowing through my body just kept getting stronger and stronger and stronger every day. And I actually stopped because at the time it got too overwhelming. And I think that was just, I wasn't, I don't know. It was maybe either because there was still some like hucha in the body that I wasn't really dealing with, and it got uncomfortable when the energy got so intense, or it could have just been that that was almost like too much energy for the physical circuit to sort of handle at the time. But just goes to show that, like, you know, the way that we, I don't know, treat our water is really important, and not just, you know, like making sure it's filtered and all that, but what are you putting into it energetically?
Right, because Doctor, you brought him up before. I always forget his name, but he did all the experiments with freezing water.
Dr. Emoto.
Dr. Emoto, and like you would just take like the energy of a word and then freeze water and like look at the pattern afterwards. And there's a really good like summary of his work in a book, in a movie called What the Bleep Do We Know? But it would, if you use a word like Hitler, for example, or fear, or pandemic, perhaps, who knows? But when you would freeze the water, it would look very chaotic and almost ugly in a way. And then if you use words like love, joy, hope, peace, it would be like this beautiful pattern. So like really,
and that would happen. They tried it first with people saying the words out loud to the water, but then they also did experiments where they just thought the words at the water.
I didn't know about the thinking with the words. I knew they would write it down on paper and then they would also say it, but the thinking part, I didn't study his work too much.
Yeah, it's well they tried all kinds of different things. They would try that with I think a lot of it started out with sound, and it was like they would play a beautiful symphony and then freeze the crystals, and then they would play like some like really like death metal or something very like chaotic like that. And same thing, like all the peaceful, the things that we normally associate with being like very peaceful, light, loving, would always generate these like beautiful crystalline structures when looked at under a microscope, and it was frozen. And then the things that a lot of people perceive to be, you know, sort of, I don't know, more chaotic, a little more dissonant, it would freeze, and it almost looked like it was really like fractured, and there was no real structure to it. It was just kind of chaotic and fractured. But yeah, same thing. So they did experiments like that, but then they did experiments with just without sound, with nothing coming into the room except for people's thoughts, and it would have the same effects.
Yeah, and there was in one of our previous episodes, I have it here. I wonder if I can show it just briefly. Oh, this one's not as nice as, well, this does the job. Let me share this in a second. Besides just the thoughts, the frequency of what we were putting into our field and the things around us has a huge effect. So like think about the music that you listen to. Let me find, I lost StreamYard. Where are you, Casey? I can't find you, but I can hear you. So I know I haven't collapsed the window completely.
Oh, I can see it.
I know it's because I made it full screen and then I couldn't see any of the tabs. Oh, how silly am I? Okay, so let me try this again. Share screen, Chrome tab, share with audio, and let me see if I can find that YouTube video again. Cymatic tube, here we go. Oops, that's not the right tab. You can see us, like this is kind of trippy, isn't it? One more time here. But the premise of what I'm about to show you shows that how different frequencies actually have like an effect on physical substance or physicality, I guess would be the word I want to use. So you can see the little sand here, and what they're going to be doing is they're running a very specific hertz frequency through that. Now I can't play this much for more than like 30 seconds because of like rules about sharing, but this is the cymatic experiment just to cover everything. And this is, if you want to see the whole video, it looks like this is from Matteo, whoever this gentleman is, making this nice little video that we're about to watch. But as they change the frequency of what you're putting onto the cymatic plate, the sand jumps around and it starts to make different patterns. So very specific patterns will make more and more complex shapes, as you can see. So when you're doing this, 440, that wasn't one of the examples here, but 440 makes like almost an incoherent blob of energy. And 432, which they call the frequency of love in some cases, makes like a 16-pointed star that looks like the sun. So when you're listening to even what you're putting on your radio, have a thought like, what is this doing to my body? Is it being a contribution, or might I be able to listen to something else that is going to create some lightness for me?
Mm. Yeah, and this is the 432 hertz thing is something that I guess I had known about for a little while, but I didn't know that you could get, for example, like instruments like a flute specifically tuned to those frequencies. And Hank has been sort of schooling me on that the past several months.
Since you mentioned the flute, I'll just show it. This is a drone flute, and I had it custom made to the frequency of 432. Instead, like 440 sounds pretty, but you can't even tell the difference that it's really like, at least audibly, you can't tell the difference that it's slightly different than like your standard music tuning. But even way back when like Mozart was around, they weren't always tuning their symphonies to 440. They were picking other frequencies. So you can, if you look, you can find all those symphonies with different tunings besides the standard 440.
Well, you pulled out the flute, so you have to play it now.
Oh, cool. Oh, I have to look that up, Mike. Mike's asking about Ed Edwards frequency, and I don't remember what it is. There we go. Little flute action for you.
You can't pull it out without playing
Yeah, but this is a drum flute,
it.
so it has two barrels, so you get two notes out of it. And depending how you play it, you can just get the one side, or you can get the effect of having the two notes harmonizing together. It's pretty awesome.
I love that thing.
Yeah, but as we are able to like measure frequency more and more, to kind of go where Mike was asking, he was asking about a gentleman named Ed Edwards, and Ed, you can find an episode of him on Ancient Aliens when he's like the most studied healer on the planet by all kinds of different universities because he has such control of his energy field. They can measure as he manipulates things and can actually knock people around and do different things like that. He was featured in a Super Bowl commercial one year blowing up a bag of Doritos. If you want to go look it up.
Oh wow!
But anyway, so Ed, whenever he's been doing these studies, they've been measuring his brain, and there's one particular hertz frequency that when he's doing what he does, that his brain goes to. And I forget what it is, but we made some prototype tuning forks where it's a binaural beat to create that frequency. So like if you study someone doing shamanism or levitating stones or whatever they're doing, if you have the ability to measure what brainwave they're in, you can map like where they're going to do what they're doing and create binaural beats to help yourself and train to go to that same frequency to help you learn to do what they probably took years and years and years to figure out doing in a fraction of the time.
Oh, that's so cool. Now, I wonder though if the different frequencies are like what we're able to access through those are different for each person. You know, like maybe his exact frequency that he goes to isn't the same frequency that my brain needs to go to in order to do the same.
Yeah, well, that's a whole another ball of wax, isn't it? Possibly. Because it may also be like how I say any crystal can do anything. Maybe you can do anything at any frequency. It's just a question of finding out, well, in that frequency, how do you have to do it versus how Ed does it.
Right.
Yeah, so that's but if you don't know how to do it, it's a good place to start.
Oh, absolutely.
And just even a set of theta forks can help, or getting a CD track from like Dick Sutphin, who has a ton of good binaural beat self-hypnosis CDs. Just anything that gets you into theta, that's where you can start to explore that world with what theta is all about and what access to information that you have. Because it's kind of like a radio. And what frequency are you tuning into? And each frequency has its own little niche. Like, oh, well, here's where you talk to earthbound spirits, and here's where you talk to people who have gone into the light, and here's where you talk to spirit guides and angels and ascended masters and so on. And with each one also comes certain healing abilities potentially. Well, this is where I go when I need to work out on hucha, and here's where I go where I need to cut cords and that kind of thing.
That's so fascinating. I know. When I was first learning to do all this work, communicate with spirit guides, do healing work and all of that, a lot of the practice that I put in the beginning was just me learning how to enter into various trance states. Trance state is just a relaxed but focused state of mind, and it's usually is somewhere between like mid alpha to low theta. Anywhere in there can be a trance state. Which is it's a broad range of frequencies, but a lot of the time I spent was doing self-hypnosis techniques or meditation techniques, just to learn to get my brain to go there. And at first, when you start to practice, it does take time to really get the mind to start to quiet down and relax and enter into those states. But then you work with anchors. Like one of the things we would do in hypnosis was once you got into that state where you were super relaxed in that like really deep trance state, you would give yourself or have someone else give you the suggestion of whenever I touch my thumb and pointer finger together, I instantly, effortlessly go right back to this deeply relaxed state. And then you play around with it. So like right after you come out of it, then you touch your fingers together and then you have the intention and you just slip right back into it. And you do that enough. And then eventually you don't even need the fingers and you can just with intention alone go right there.
No, I actually used something like that last night when I did the Sonic Shaman concert, which, by the way, everyone, if you missed, I streamed it live to a Facebook group, which is free to join. If you go to Conversations with Consciousness, or if you search for that group, that's a group where we're streaming there right now. And we're kind of making that a place that in between the streams, if you want to interact with Casey and I or me and Sean, all the different things that we're streaming that we're affiliated with, they're all going to be rolling up to that group going forward. And it's going to create a space where people can interact with each other a little bit easier than on a YouTube video and stuff like that in between streams. But anyhow, The stream from yesterday's Sonic Shaman concert is there, and I did a whole healing around the world and the coronavirus and all this stuff. And while we were really in the thick of the healing and the healing part in a nice little Theta state, I had everybody squeeze their finger in one spot to set an anchor point. So you get a great example of that. And if you have an hour, it's about an hour long, sit with that. Headphones are probably best because the speaker didn't pick up the bowls as well as I would have liked. But the guided meditation part is really powerful if you want to check that out and get your experience of an anchor. And maybe, just maybe, as you go about your day with all the craziness, standing in line, getting into stores and all that, you can just tap that anchor and slip into your peace and calm.
And for that purpose alone, anchoring is amazing. I've used it a lot of times myself where, periods of like higher stress and anxiety, when I would have to whatever it is, go out to the grocery store, go to work, I would use an anchor like that where as soon as I felt myself starting to get a little worked up, I would just do whatever it was and then just slip into that really relaxed state. And then sometimes I would just play with it and see like how long can I hold that super relaxed trance-like state while also walking around and doing things.
Yeah, and for me, when I started my meditation practice, I had started by using one of those little tin shaws to make a little ding before I would start to meditate. And then I thought, well, I don't always have those with me, so what would be a wiser thing to choose, perhaps? And for me, it was simply 3 deep breaths. I would take 3 deep breaths, and I could just slip right to where I go with meditation because I trained myself. I take 3 breaths, and then I meditate. So 3 breaths, and then I would just slip into the space of meditation without meditating at all. And when I was, especially when I was on the phone job at Bank of America and then MBNA, formerly MBNA, Hurricane Katrina times, you can just imagine how much hoocha and heaviness was coming through those phone lines for people who were calling in, and that saved me, really. Just three breaths and off I was, being able to be centered, and then could move on to the next call, and it was really powerful. So if you don't meditate now, pick something, doing this, pulling your ears, whatever weird little anchor thing you want to do, 3 deep breaths like me, and that's going to help you set the tone to slip back into that space when you need it. So you develop the practice to set the anchor, but then you trigger the anchor by doing one of these little things.
Right. Come on, there was an interesting thought there.
Come back, interesting thought.
No, but that really is when a lot of people have difficulty doing energy work or communicating with spirit guides or whatever they're trying to do. I think the biggest thing people have difficulty with is that some people don't take the time to really get themselves into that trance state. And I think you can, like we said, do anything at any brainwave frequency. So if we're like in that beta brainwave state of like running around and getting things done, like I can tune in and see spirit guides at any time, even if I'm like stressed out driving the car or whatever I'm doing. But a lot of people never take the time to learn how to lower their brainwave frequency to get into that trance state. So it's difficult for people to really access it. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is the example was I had a group of people one time and I was trying to teach them how to communicate with their spirit guides. So I asked the question, who here is aware of their spirit guides around them? And this was a group of people that they have all had communication with their guides before, but they could not sense, see, or communicate with them while they were not in a journey-like state. So we sat there and I was asking, and everyone said, no, I have no idea. I can't sense them right now. I can't see them. And so I guided everyone through a process of just getting into that trance state, just simple relaxation, focusing on the body, and then a little visual thing to relax the mind. And then I told them, okay, while remaining in that same peaceful, relaxed state, now I want you to imagine what your guides would look like if they were around you right now. And then everyone was describing in great detail what their guides looked like and what they felt like, and they were getting communication from them. So it's really, and that's one of the things I do when I do one-on-one spirit guide communication lessons. That's one of the big teaching points, is just how to start to learn to at will go into that trance state to do the work.
Right. And I wonder, is it learning that to do that while you're in beta, or when they were studying Ed, they determined that his brain was in different, like multiple levels at the same time. So he was in theta and like multiple levels of brainwave activity. And so maybe it's just like, instead of one band, maybe you have 2, 3, 4, 8. So is it being in beta, or is it being able to be in beta and theta at the same time?
Right. Oh, see, I
So,
never even thought about
yeah.
that.
So,
Wow.
and that's just the science of it. If we ever get Ed to come on, he's kind of getting out there in the world now. Ever since he was on TV, he's a lot busier than he used to be. So I haven't had a chance to pin him down as easily. But if he ever comes on, like he'll talk a lot about the science, and um, it's really interesting. And just being able to see like universities showing a brain up and seeing that it's in all these different levels of consciousness at once. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, no, it is. And I know that's one of the cool things about like the Dalai Lama is that I think there are a lot of other like spiritual traditions that aren't. I don't know. I could be wrong, but I have the feeling, at least when I used to research things, that like certain traditions wouldn't be so open to like having people run tests on them and things. But the Dalai Lama is always like really open to like people who want to do research and like study his brainwave states and all that. So I know like he's always like really up for that and fascinated to learn about what's going on
Oh, I did know too about
scientifically.
the Dalai Lama.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And he and so that I was researching it at one point. I couldn't tell you what website or what to really search, but maybe just type in on Google or something Dalai Lama, I don't know, brainwave frequencies, or I know they did. What did they call that? Like a live MRI thing where they had him meditate, and then they showed the areas of the brain that were like.
Topographical brain mapping.
Yes.
Yep.
And so so you can see that like what the Dalai Lama's brain looks like when he's in meditation. So
The
that's
neuroscientists who did the research studies on access bars, like doing brain mapping of what access bars is doing, has studied like the Dalai Lama and had the different meditators hooked up, and that's what made him so interested in access, because he saw 90 minutes of bar session made people go from like 95, I forget how many magnitude anxious, to normal, which is like unheard of. And then he devoted like years of his life studying access, and then it got all flushed down the toilet at the end. But he was enamored at seeing how easily a little something like the bars can just shift you. And so, like, what tools could we have that would allow us to be more like the Dalai Lama and be able to have our brain do all kinds of fun stuff?
So wait, were you saying that the Dalai Lama studied access consciousness?
No, a neuroscientist that did a study of
Oh,
access bars also studied the Dalai Lama's, or somebody. Like,
okay.
he referenced monks and different meditators, so I'm thinking I don't know for sure if he did the Dalai Lama, honestly, but he's done other people like that do a lot of meditation and things like that. And
Oh,
also
that's really
people
cool.
who are receiving and giving Reiki sessions, he would hook them up and he would just monitor what was happening in the brainwave activities of both the practitioner and the recipient.
Oh yeah, see that's fascinating stuff, and I know now. One of the things that I find really cool is those. I think they said they have one at Goddess Elite, is what you said. The cameras that can see the auric
Yeah,
field
the
around
aura
a
camera.
person.
Like, you put your hand on it, and then it will show the energy field and all that kind of stuff. And Mike, just one clarification: my concert did not stream to YouTube yesterday because it was the first time trying to stream something like that. I chose just to do it to the private group. I might post it afterwards on YouTube, but right now it's just in that Facebook group. So you didn't miss it last night. It was not streamed there. And Shar was asking, have you I've heard you guys mention access bars. Where can you investigate that? Well, if you go to holistichealthandhealing.net, that's the website for the center. You can look up some of the, I think we have some of the videos up. Now I'm not sure. Or just accessconsciousness.com would be the place to find out more about access. If you want to look at the video specifically that I mentioned, Google Access Consciousness Neuroscientist, and you will find the presentation of the neuroscientist showing his findings of access bars at a medical conference.
Oh, that's all cool stuff. Oh,
Yep,
well,
I'll post a
I,
link.
I was just now noticing the time because I have a massage clients today, so I'm going to have to hop off here in a couple minutes. So maybe we can give our sort of
Yeah. So,
wrapping it up thoughts.
so last call for questions too, real quick questions only. And let me put this up in a banner real quick. Oh, not that one. We will. Here we go. So it's just accessconsciousness.com, and that is the website for it, if you want to check that out. And basically, access consciousness, the definition is, they say, pure consciousness is the awareness of everything that is in the absence of a judgment about it. And the whole modality is focused around tools to help you break limitations that hold you in the duality and to the addiction of polarity, and expand into possibility. In a nutshell, that's what access does, between talking tools, clearing processes, and energy flows. So, yeah.
Very cool.
Cool. So final thoughts, Casey, my brother.
Well, we talked a lot about brainwave states and frequencies and things today, and I guess what I'm feeling called to say right now is, you don't have to get too caught up in the science of it. You don't have to learn anything about brainwave frequencies at all, but know that there are a lot of really excellent tools out there that can help you to more easily take control of how to put it, your mental state, right? So when we're trying to do healing work, communicating with guides or whatever, it's very advantageous to have some control over how mentally relaxed we are. And so things like binaural beats, tuning forks, anchoring, all that stuff, all these tools are out there. So just find whichever one sort of resonates with you, start playing around with it. And if nothing else, just take note of how you start to feel when you play with these different tools. And you may find that it's really improves the quality of your life just to have a little bit more control over how mentally relaxed you are. That may bring great quality of peace into your life you didn't have before.
Right. For me, being the person that loves questions so much, which is an access thing, by the way, to leave you with this question, like if you don't want to go down the science route or get tuning forks, simply stating this question, and don't get caught up in the words of the question. It's more important, or it's rather, Casey says it all the time, words point to an energy. And an access to questions it's not about the words, it's about the energy that it brings up and being aware of the energy and not making yourself define what that energy is when it comes up, just letting it be. So you ask, what energy could I be to allow my brain and my being to shift into these other places of consciousness? And you just say that question, or you can tailor it to your own needs, but you just ask a question. Don't look for an answer, but watch what about the energy that comes up. And that's what you pay attention to. And then you just allow yourself to kind of be with that energy, and that's going to help make it start making the shift for you just by asking that question. You could ask that every day. What energy could I be today to be more in that state than any day before this? And just allow that energy to come up, and then you flow with it. Practice spiritual progress, not perfection. So give yourself a break if you don't get it the first day. Just keep asking the question, keep allowing the energy, and the more you ask the question, the more and more you're going to shift to being in that space the whole time.
I love it. All right. Well, everyone, thank you for your energy and your attention. I thank you so much for being here. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
A Nike, a Nike, a Nike.